filled with information. Where do you turn to get straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Lock it in to the longest-running financial talk show in Arkansas, and let us help you build the bridge between information and application. Real financial change begins right here, and it starts with you.
It's showtime! Woo!
Hey, good morning, everybody. On today's Get Ready for the Future show, we are wrapping up our summer movie series, learning financial lessons from cinema classics. Today, what can we learn from the animated movie Up? Stay tuned. And we welcome you into today's Get Ready for the Future show all across the state of Arkansas and live streaming online this Wednesday morning on Facebook and YouTube. My name is Scott Inman, and Janet Walker and Teresa Arago are with us as well. Yeah, thanks for waving. It is a little bit of a different setup this morning, and we'll explain. First of all, John's not here, but we are using this opportunity in light of the announcement by the governor last week of a statewide mask mandate to not only wear our mask, which, by the way, we did on our way in. We have to take off to be able to speak on our live stream and our radio show. But we, for our radio audience who has no idea what's going on, we are actually separating a little bit more than we have in recent weeks. It is very difficult around our oval table in our radio room to space out enough with 3 or sometimes 4 people on the radio at one time. And we have chosen to make a little bit extra effort to try to get through this pandemic. I think we all want it to be complete, ladies, and get over it and get to the next level of normalcy, back to normalcy if we can. And look, we're going to throw everything at it that we can to make sure that we're doing our part. And so we've separated. With technology, it's a little bit easier to do. I feel way more laid back in here, although I am a little more isolated. I'm in the marketing office, so I feel like I'm highly more creative than I would normally be just being here. But I am missing being there with you.
Scott, I'm just excited about you guys being separated from like where my movie theater popcorn is. If y'all have to stay 6 feet away, you can't reach my popcorn. So I'm
That's
good
true.
to go.
She claimed it before we even started the show, so that, I guess I don't need any anyway. It's fine. It's fine.
She must have been the first one in the room.
No, I just wasn't going to grab it.
She just didn't claim it.
It's that, you've got to read. The answer's no till you ask the question. She asked the question and I didn't, so she won.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we've been doing over the last few weeks on the Get Ready for the Future show, because of all the seriousness that is around that we've already kind of addressed here, and the pandemic has certainly affected all of our emotions, and we're really struggling sometimes to see some positivity. We thought we'd take a break by doing something way more light for about a 3-week period, and we've called it our summer movie series. I don't know many pastors that haven't done a summer movie series at church, so we're going to adopt it from a financial perspective. And we started with Top Gun a couple of weeks ago. Last week, I heard it was a great show with John enjoying The Princess Bride. I hear it is now his favorite movie.
He shared that it was a really awesome movie. He really enjoyed it. Actually, no, he said the only thing that was a redeeming quality was because the giant was in it. That was literally it. The wrestler, Andre the Giant was in it. That was the only redeeming quality. And I would say the vast majority of people who are out there would disagree. I think it's an amazing movie.
Some people just don't know quality entertainment when they see it.
Well, and he said he liked Napoleon Dynamite, so that, may be why. I don't know.
The lack of quality entertainment. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's why he's not on today's show, because he didn't like this movie, but we're talking about the movie Up today, which I took my kids to. This is a Pixar movie. And usually it's automatic. There was a time where it was automatic. If Pixar put a movie out, everybody went to go see it.
Right. Yes.
And Up was one that, we just went into not knowing anything really about it, other than it was Pixar. And our kids were pretty young when it came out. And, the first thing I remember about it was, is this a kids movie?
It's kind of heavy. It's
got
pretty
some heavy stuff in it.
Yeah. The first time that I watched it, I will say I did not give it time to really enjoy it. I basically shut down after the first few minutes because I was just like, I don't want to watch a cartoon and be sad.
Yeah.
But it ultimately is a really, really good movie if you can get past the first 20 minutes of it.
It really gives some good life lessons, and we're going to draw some financial lessons from those life lessons today, but it is different for an animated movie. And if you're not sure yet, like if the title hasn't clicked with you, you probably have in your mind the image of a house floating away being carried by a lot of helium-filled balloons. That's the movie we're talking about today.
Yep. Yeah, and it's everything that happened up until that point that I think we can draw most of our financial lessons from, quite frankly. There's a lot that does happen, even though we probably didn't, Teresa and I are on the same page here, we didn't enjoy the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Right.
And I probably would have if I wasn't thinking about how my 7-year-old was responding to it when we watched it. But there is a lot packed into those first 20 minutes. If you haven't seen the movie, it's about Carl and Ellie, who is his soon-to-be wife. In the first few minutes, it's like a montage there for those first few minutes. Carl and Ellie's basically their courting process. They meet as children, and they're both wanting to chase adventure. That is their goal in life. That's their dream, I should say, in life. And they want to go to this place called Paradise Falls. And through that montage, you see what happens to them in their lives over about a 30 or 40 year period as they get older and things happen, and they never make that adventure happen. And I think there's a great jumping off point when you think about how they got to where they were 30 or 40 years later, the decisions that they made. Now, and we can go over some of those, but their dream of having children and beginning to plan, they had that derailed by something that's not in their control. They had a miscarriage there. So they do begin saving anything they can come up with. First of all, they don't have probably high-paying jobs. They never do address how much money they make. But
if you catch
they
that part,
are a balloon salesman and a zoo tour guide, right?
Yeah, a zoo tour guide and a balloon salesman. And they seem to really enjoy their careers together. And I think that was the thing. They were always happy to be together, but when it comes to their plan, it was literally just a glass jar full of change.
Yeah.
That's not really a plan. That's like saying your investments at your employer plan is your plan.
Well, and I think there's a bit of a significant reality check really here, because as children, it's all about, we're going to have this adventure and we're going to go to Paradise Falls and life is going to be fabulous. And I'm just going to tell you from the adult side of the equation, sometimes life sucks, and and it is hard, and it's very difficult as a parent to look at my 14-year-old and 17-year-old and go, you know what, they've got it pretty darn stinking good right now. I wonder what their storms are going to be, because they are going to have them, and there will be, in most cases, storms carry a financial element to them as well. And so they start out, Carl and Ellie start out as children, starry-eyed, focused on the adventure, and we're going to save money and we're going to go there, not thinking about, you know what, some crap is going to happen in life, and we're going to need money to deal with that stuff. And so the financial lesson from this, one of the first ones that we see, is let's be realistic that sometimes life sucks. Yeah, you can use that as your official explanation, of why you have to have an emergency fund, and that emergency fund has to be separate from your adventure fund, if you want to call it that in the context of this movie. I want you to go and have adventure. I want you to make it to Paradise Falls. I want you to do those things together. But if you don't plan to deal with the life sucks part, then we're not going to be able to do the fun part either.
And taking that money and just socking it away without a purpose or without action steps, goals that have action steps are always more realistic to attain. If you have those 1, 2, 3 progressive steps, that's really beneficial. And that's one of the things we do for people, is help them come up with action step 1, action step 2. Maybe that is paying off debt first. Maybe that is getting your emergency fund first. But we'll help you with those action steps, so it's not just a broad, I'd like to get here kind of plan.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing.
We all three are just coming off of vacation ourselves. I didn't go to Paradise Falls, far from it, but we did go to South Florida, which was a really nice trip. But we're all very tuned into how that has to be separate, as you mentioned, Janet. You got to have an emergency fund, and then we have a vacation fund. Now, it may be in the same account. You don't have to have necessarily 2 different accounts, but you have to determine, this is my emergency fund, and then above and beyond that, I'm going to save for a particular event like a vacation. So we're already probably ruining this movie for lots of people if they haven't seen it. But financial lessons that you can draw from the movie Up, part of our summer movie series on the Get Ready for the Future show. Time to take a break, and we'll be back with more right after this.
What do you know about saving money?
So you'll have more stuff that you can get.
So, would you rather spend money or save money? You'd rather save money?
Yeah, I would get $1 and $1 after 2 days.
Do you know what a credit card is?
Yes.
What's a credit card?
Something that has money on it. And if you cash it in, you can pay with it.
But how does the money get on the credit card?
Bill Gates.
What about a car? How much money do you think it takes to buy a car?
100.
So for $100, what would your car look like?
A pink car that has glitter all over it.
So if I gave you what would you buy with it?
Maybe a car. 2, 3 houses. 100 wood. 2,000 toys. And infinity couches.
What do you think a 401k is?
A candy bar. Okay, a wafer with chocolate syrup on top and then caramel on top and then chocolate chips.
Would you cover it in chocolate?
Yeah.
Tell me everything you know about money.
That it costs a lot and that people get only a few things. And if you save money, you can get stuff that you need.
From the Gen Wealth Radio Network studios, we're back with more of the Get Ready for the Future show.
A rainy Wednesday morning as we live stream the Get Ready for the Future show here this morning. Scott Inman along with Janet Walker and Teresa Arago. And a reminder, if you're watching on our Facebook stream, you can comment in the section. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe it's just a comment of what you thought about the movie Up, or if you have a question for us, financially related or otherwise, please feel free to chime in as we are separated on our live stream today. In light of the state mask mandate that was issued last week, we're trying to do our part to ensure that we not only are complying with that order, but also keeping our distance. I'm isolated just down the hallway. I could probably open the door and shout, and you guys could hear me not through the headset. We're very close, but within 6 feet, or farther away than 6 feet, I should say, and both of you are as well. As we try to take some financial lessons from the movie Up today. It's our final week of our summer movie series, drawing financial lessons from our favorite movies. And we talked about Carl and Ellie. If you have seen the movie Up, Carl is the old guy, eventually old. It shows that montage for the first few minutes of the film is all about him being young and meeting Ellie, and they have this dream of going to Paradise Falls. And we talked about in the last segment how that dream was really never planned for very well, and the unplanned for events in their life disrupted that. They didn't have an emergency fund built up. And, after 3 failed attempts to save for Paradise Falls, the movie shifts to focus on Carl and Ellie's daily work life. That we mentioned that in the first segment, ladies. They work 30 to 40 years in the same roles until their hair begins to turn gray. And we know that there are circumstances in life that may lead people to do that. But I think when you draw a financial lesson here, and they were saving pennies and nickels and dimes in a jar and really scraping to get by, there are some things that you can do about your circumstances, create an increased opportunity for more income. Nobody wants to work at the same job for 30 or 40 years and never get a raise. That does make it difficult to save what is necessary for your trips, if you want to go someplace like Paradise Falls, or retirement.
And I think that can go both directions. Sometimes it's about our spending habits. But for me, for instance, I was a bookkeeper for 15 years. Learned it after college. It just kind of fell into that role. And when I came and joined the Gem Wealth team, because of my connection to Janet, I started learning about what our advisors do, and it ignited a passion in me. And I remember as the bookkeeper, John saying, well, do you want to learn more? And I thought, yeah, but how does that serve Gem Wealth? I guess he saw that. He saw the passion, and he thought this is something she could pursue passionately. And now I'm one of our advisors. Never would have thought this is where I was going to be as a kid. And something I always encourage people, always be willing to learn more, because you never know what passion might be ignited in you just because you're willing to give something that you've never done before a shot.
Well, and I think that allowed you to put your Paradise Falls savings jar, if you will, in a different place. I think we may have an image of this where in the movie they show the savings. Okay, we don't have that. In the movie they show the savings jar for Paradise Falls, and it's sitting over in a corner on the bookshelf collecting dust, which means it's not a priority in their life. And there are times, I mean, many of you have heard the story, of what Stephen and I went through after his car wreck, and we had all kinds of medical bills. We had over 6 figures in medical bills above and beyond what the insurance company was going to pay. We weren't going to Paradise Falls during that time in life. But what that time in life also did is there was someone who stepped in, very much like what we did with you, Teresa. There was someone who stepped in my life and said, hey, you know what? You need to look into the financial industry because you're a teacher at heart, and that's what makes a good advisor. And I think that this is something that you could do and be passionate about. And because Stephen was working a job, and then because of health reasons was not, we had gone from 2 incomes to 1 and had all of this medical stuff, medical debt. And so it put us in a position where we couldn't pursue our dreams. But then that career change, I still feel like I'm a teacher. It's just a different subject, different students. So I'm still pursuing something that I am very passionate about. But it has allowed us to, if you'll play through to the movie here, it has allowed us to move that jar, that Paradise Falls jar, off of a dusty shelf in the corner and put it at the forefront. And we're able to fund our dreams and, frankly, some for other people, because we've been in a position to be blessed to do that. But we went through a time where we couldn't. That's okay, but don't forever leave that jar on a corner in a shelf. Grow yourself so that you can help grow other people.
Can I ask how old you were when you made that choice? Because I think that's something people need to understand. I was mid-30s.
Let me think about this a minute. I was in my very late 20s, almost 30.
And I have a degree in Spanish.
And
like
I have
you.
a degree in Spanish, yes.
I think a lot of people don't realize just because you didn't go to college for it doesn't mean that you can't grow yourself otherwise. I planned to be a Spanish teacher. That's a long story we'll have to tell another time, thanks to Janet, honestly. But if I had not been willing to learn bookkeeping in the first place, out of college, just as something that I thought, I'll do it for a little while I get my non-traditional licensure.
Right.
If I hadn't been willing to learn what I learned here, these opportunities would not have presented themselves.
Yeah.
And I was, again, in my mid-30s. So it's not like you have to know what you're going to do at 18.
Yeah.
And there are, it's rare, there are still people who work in the same place, for their entire career. It does still happen. Even there, I would encourage you, grow yourself. Even within the walls of the same business, grow yourself while you're there.
I tell my son, who is in college currently, I've told him this on many occasions, that unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that's going to require a license, your college degree is just showing that you have commitment to something.
That's
that you
right.
can see something through and finish it, and it will take you anywhere you want. And I've occasionally even spoken to graduation ceremonies. I can remember a community college in Stuttgart area that I spoke to, and one of the things that I spent a lot of time on when I was giving that address was never stop learning.
Yeah.
And that's to your point, Janet, is you may not know where you want to go. You may not know what kind of career change you want, but if you're always learning, reading, being inquisitive and curious about things, it's going to ignite a passion somewhere along the way that could lead you in a different direction.
And you just hit on one of the keys that I focus on in life. You said it's going to ignite a passion. It is a huge deal for me for people to passionately pursue their purpose. And I don't believe your purpose has to necessarily be the same throughout your entire life, but you have a purpose at various points along the way. My daughter, she just turned 14 this summer, and this week, this is a proud mommy moment. Y'all are going to have to bear with me for just a moment. She started working at Genwealth, like officially on the clock working at Genwealth. And
nice.
yeah, she got her worker's permit and everything. And it wasn't something that I said, hey, you're going to go to work, kid. That was not the choice. She has a goal. She wants to buy her own vehicle when she turns 16, and so if she's going to do that, she needs to earn some income, and so this was her choice to do that. So right now, her job is a means to an end. I'm not fooling myself that she'll be here till retirement. That's likely not the scenario. But what we did that first day that she went to work, we prayed together that she would at some point at the appropriate time, that it would not be a means to an end, that it would be something that she would be passionate about, whatever job that might be. So I would challenge you, if you're somewhere where you feel like, number one, monetarily, you're just kind of, your jar's collecting dust over there, you can't really make progress, but number two, and frankly to me more importantly, if you're not passionate about it, take some time to find something that you can pursue with passion, because life's too short. There should be adventure in work. It's not just funding an adventure for elsewhere. There should be adventure and fun and challenge in what you do for a job. So figure that one out.
Yeah, my dad told me when I was a kid, son, you're going to spend a third of your life working at something, so you better enjoy it.
Yeah,
that's for
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely.
We do need to move on in the movie, but I do want to say a quick note, too, while we're talking about the jar collecting dust. That also says something about investment strategy, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know if it's an emergency fund, we want it in cash. We'd rather it be in the bank than in the jar, in a dusty jar. But the other side of that is if this was long-term, if they were really pushing out 10, 15-year plans, that jar collecting dust that's all it's collecting. It's not collecting any interest or any return.
That's right.
Absolutely. You've got to put it to work. If you're going to have those dollars sitting still for a long time, put them to work and make them do something for you also.
And that sounds like a kind of a given or a very basic concept, but I just read a study not that long ago, I think a week or so ago, about how many millennials are still fearful of the stock market, that they do not want to invest because of what they've seen in their lifetime, whether they grew up in 2008 and saw that happen or what happened earlier this year. But it is certainly a means to an end as far as accomplishing your retirement goals goes. Well, obviously we know that the saddest part of the movie really is that Carl loses his wife Ellie. They were going to buy tickets, or I think he did buy tickets actually, for them to go to Paradise Falls, but Ellie goes into the hospital and eventually passes away, and that's where that montage ends. And you wake up to real life, and Carl's an old grumpy man, very discontented about his life. The scene I think of is him stone-faced crawling down the staircase in that hover chair that
takes way too long, and it just stays on the shot.
Yes, and he and his decisions between this point in the movie and to what leads him to Paradise Falls is worth hanging out on just a little bit, because he really makes some big mistakes. A construction truck knocks over his mailbox, and he ultimately hits a guy trying to help him with his cane. They determine he has to go in the nursing home. So his bitterness has taken over in his life because of where he has landed. And I think of people that maybe they're certainly not to that level, ladies, but when they come to see us, their fear or their worry about where they are they going to be able to do what they want to do and make retirement when they want to make it and have the life they want? That can affect your decisions. And I think that that's a clarity point here as well in the movie.
I think that fear, self-isolation, grief, all of the things that we see him going through here, just the emotional disaster that comes from unfulfilled dreams for so long, that's a mess. But the reality is, even if you haven't had the adventures that you wanted to have in the past, you are where you are. So let's start having some adventures where we are. We
and
may
it's
not
okay
be,
to change your
yeah,
adventures.
that's exactly right.
Goals
Absolutely.
that you had, change them. Come up with new passions, new things you can pursue, because whether it's before or after retirement, having something to fill your time that you can enjoy is critical to your mental health.
It absolutely is.
And we definitely, we talk about all the time that being fearful is going to encourage you to make the wrong decision at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. You've got to make sure that especially your financial decisions are being made with an unemotional heart. You've got to be able to look at the numbers without your emotions clouding your judgment. And I think that's one of the things with him is that mailbox was something he and Ellie had made together. So it was symbolic of them, not just a mailbox. And he let the emotion of the moment overtake him and ultimately was going to cost him his house.
We also are introduced to one of the main characters of the movie, Russell, who's a wilderness explorer trying to earn his badge for assisting the elderly. He winds up on the house as Carl decides to tie all those balloons to that sucker and send and sail off to Paradise Falls, the most iconic scene in the movie. And we're going to hang out on that. On the other side of the break, it's time for one of those as the Get Ready for the Future show continues right after this.
At Gen Wealth, one of our standards is that we value good communication. One of my favorite quotes about good communication is from George Bernard Shaw. He said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. If you ever doubt that, come to my house, listen to my 16-year-old son and my 13-year-old daughter having a conversation and see what happens, because they will walk away with completely different understandings of the conversation that has occurred. It happens every time. It's okay, they're still learning communication. But here at Gen Wealth, we believe that that's something you need to experience every time you walk in our door, that you need to feel understood, that you need to feel listened to. So you'll see a change in how we're even communicating. If you're talking about something that's very serious, very personal, you'll even hear a change in our tone of voice, because that's just how good communication is supposed to be. But it also means that we can feed back to you what you've shared with us, just so you know that we're listening. We value good communication.
A burning question? Email info@getreadyforthefuture.com with your name, location, and question to get a response on the air from the Gen Wealth team. Now, back to the Get Ready for the Future show.
You can certainly do the email, but you can also mention in your comments. Just put a comment if you're watching on Facebook as we live stream on this Wednesday, the Get Ready for the Future show. And we're going through and finishing this week our summer movie series, trying to glean some financial lessons from some of our all-time favorites. And the movie we're talking about today is Up. And we have reached the point in the movie where Carl, the grumpy old man who has seen all of his hopes and dreams crushed through his 40-year work life, losing his wife and never making it to Paradise Falls, and now being condemned, I guess, to go to a nursing home, be forced to go to a nursing home. He decides to tie all these helium balloons to his home. And the most unrealistic part of this fantasy movie, but the most fun part and the most iconic scene is when those balloons lift off and Carl takes off in an effort to reach his dreams. And I think the financial lesson for me here, we don't spoil the film by saying this because it is a fantasy and you suspend reality when you watch a fantasy. But in real life, think about how unrealistic and how much of a last-ditch effort he is making here because he hasn't done the things that he needed to do. He's made the wrong decisions in life, and now his goal, his dream, if you want to apply that to retirement or financial independence, is now hinged to a big ball of balloons pulling his house off the ground and sailing to Paradise Falls.
Yeah, it's really pretty crazy when you think it has to happen in a Pixar movie. It can't happen in reality. But I will say there are people, I know this because I'm married to a geek and gave birth to a geek, and so we know these types of things in our household. But there are people who have actually attached, balloons to lawn chairs, and they've gone up to insane heights and come back down, lived through it and all of that. But here's the difference. In the Pixar movie, the balloons when he lifts his house. First of all, it takes his entire house. Secondly, it takes him ultimately where he wants to go.
Yeah.
In reality, these guys who've attached balloons to their chairs, they go where the wind takes them. They are in zero control of where they're going to wind up.
Rudderless.
And, what'd you say?
I said rudderless.
Yeah, they're rudderless. So without a plan, without a way to implement a specific plan, they're just going. And when we think about, okay, what's the application on this financially, we got kind of tickled talking about it, but this is accurate. It is more realistic for you to tie all these balloons to your house like Carl did and for it to take you to your desired destination than it is for you to attempt retirement using the 4% rule. Like the first one is more likely to actually happen the exact way you want it to than for the 4% rule to work. Let's talk a little bit about what the 4% rule is and why it doesn't work anymore.
So when you looked at kind of the way people used to do retirement income strategies, you'd take your...
And some people still do.
And yes, a lot. Actually, so I'm doing the RICP training, which is a specialization talking about being an entrepreneur within your role that we as advisors can do. And so I'm learning a lot of research as part of this. And one of the sections is purely about this rule.
Yeah.
And it talks about how basically historically people would buy 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and they draw 4% from their portfolio every year, increasing for inflation, of course.
Right.
So ultimately, you're taking way more than 4%. But that was supposed to be a strategy that you could utilize. There's a few problems with that now. First of all, that portion of your strategy that was in bonds 20 years ago was getting 8 to 12 to 16%.
Yeah.
Bonds aren't getting that now. Remember those great interest rates that you're enjoying on your home and on your vehicle loans? They also mean that bonds aren't really earning much unless you get into really risky ones. Also, people are living longer. And so that strategy has to last your entire retirement, which could be longer than the people who are retiring 10, 15 years ago. Retirement income and planning for retirement are two totally different ballgames. So make sure that your strategy is taking care of all the risks of retirement and not leaving you kind of hung out to dry like the balloons would if you're out in the wind.
Absolutely.
I think of this too. Even if that works from the standpoint, let's go to the 4% rule and say, even if that works out for you and you don't run out of money, because that's how we're quantifying working out for you. It's still not going to be a consistent income.
Right.
You're not going to have a consistent monthly or even annual income because it is going to be dependent on what that portfolio is producing. If it's down 1 year, you can't take the 4. If you take 4%, you're taking too much, right?
Yes, we've done that math before. Say you had $1 million taking 4%, $40,000 a year. Well, if your portfolio drops like 2008.
Yeah, so if the portfolio in 2008 the market was down 40%. So let's just take that $1 million. Don't worry about the 40,000 that you've already withdrawn. We're going to simplify the math here. If the $1 million is down 40%, we now have $600,000. So if we go by the 4% rule, now it is 4% of 600,000, not of the original million. So instead of withdrawing 40,000 a year to follow the rule, we need to take $24,000. So that's a significant pay decrease to go from 40,000 to 24,000 in a year. The other choice is, do you continue to take $40,000, which is now not a 4% withdrawal rate, but a 6.7% withdrawal rate off of that $600,000. And the reality is you're going to run out of money if you go that route. So your choices in this scenario are you run out of money, or you take a significant pay decrease. You talk about, the lesser of two evils. So there has to be a way to do retirement income without using the 4% rule because it simply does not work anymore. And that's why we don't use that at GenWealth.
The other concept that you can get from this part of the movie for me is, he's done this thing and he's in kind of panic mode, right?
Yeah.
He's hit this guy, he's about to lose his house, and now it's, crap, now what do I do to save my house and to save myself?
Minute. Yeah.
And he makes this decision as a last-ditch effort. How many times have we had people come in, they're wanting to retire, but they're just not ready.
Yeah.
And so we're having to make these great leaps and bounds to get them there because they didn't take the time to come in and start that plan.
Right.
Today's the day. If you're later than you would have liked to have been, then start today, because you can't control what you've done in the past, but you can control what you do from this point forward.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of what we talked about earlier, that you might not have had the adventures in the past that you wanted to, but have some adventures now. Let's start planning for that.
if you are getting close to retirement and you're interested in learning about a dynamic, robust income plan that's very definitive, you know consistently on a month-to-month basis what you're going to receive from your assets, you can go through the Gen Wealth Ready to Retire process by picking up the phone and calling us. If you're watching on our live stream, you can do it now, 501-653-7355. And if you're listening on our Saturday morning radio show, you can also call now, but we'll have to get back with you on Monday. The offices are closed. 501-653-7355. You can write it down and call on Monday as well, or just send us an email. If you're near your laptop or computer, just send it info@getreadyforthefuture.com. And, you know, I think about, Janet, you talking about being married to a geek and giving birth to a geek.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here listening. Only financial geeks could look at a movie with balloons lifting a house into the air and come up with the 4% rule. It doesn't work.
That's right.
My kids are constantly going, can we have any conversation that doesn't include some sort of financial principle?
My daughter was talking to some friends during the end of the school year. They're all doing everything, you know, on electronically, Zoom type thing. So she has a Zoom meeting, and I walk in and hear part of a conversation, and I just take that breath that you take right before you're about to speak. You know, I do that, and my daughter looks at her classmates and says, "Prepare for a life lesson. Here it comes." She knew, yeah.
All right, so when they get into the air, we talked about this direction that you're going to go wherever the wind blows. You know, Carl is desperately trying to save all of his belongings when he gets into a storm, and Russell is there. We talked about Russell, who ends up being a stowaway on this ill-conceived adventure, and he steers the house towards South America during that storm with his GPS. And there's that line in the movie when he holds it out and says, "With this baby, we'll never be lost," and then he drops it. Oops.
Right out the window.
Yep.
He is putting everything on that GPS. And hey, I've had my GPS stories. I've had my problems with GPS. You know, they don't always take you where they tell you. I've told that story about trying to find the Gainesville, Florida airport and winding up in a cul-de-sac instead, and my GPS said I was there. You can't trust any one thing to get you there. And in our world, that is sometimes in the form of an investment product. I have this product that's going to take me there. Everything is banked on one thing.
And sometimes it's even a collection of products. So they feel like they've checked the box on diversification, but the question is, do those products meet your plan? Like if you had to say, going back to the GPS for the house, are you on track? What are the parameters that allow you to check the box to say, yes, I am on track, or no, I am not? If you don't have that guideline, that true north, so to speak, to say, yes, I'm on track, or no, I'm not, then so what? You just got a mix of products, and it's not necessarily doing what you need it to do. It has to be plan first, products later.
And be cautious of that little calculator on your employer plan site.
Oh, my goodness.
Because it's tricky. If you don't understand what goes into the math and how to calculate that beyond just it assuming a percentage, it's not going to be accurate most likely. So please don't use that as your am I on track marker. It's a little tricky. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that that products, they are tools and they are important, and certainly even rate of return. We talk about that as well. It's not the end all beat all either. It is important, but it's all part of the overall plan. I tell folks all the time, we have a toolbox, and every advisor that has the same licensing has that same toolbox. But the trick is, we don't want to pull out a wrench when you need a hammer.
Right.
And how many times in this movie do they think they have a plan and then the plan goes awry? So the question is, does your plan that you have in mind, does it have contingencies? Yeah. Does it have the steps in place that when life happens, because it will, you've got other backups to lean into? You know, that's part of our planning process, is we plan for the contingencies that are going to happen.
Well, Carl is a bit impulsive. When they drop that GPS, he takes over. He tries to finish steering them to Paradise Falls and doesn't want to get too close to the ground, but they hit the ground anyway. They get knocked out of the house, just barely save it from floating away. And then the fog clears and Carl realizes he's almost made it, but he wants to just float right over. His idea to float over the falls doesn't quite work out, though.
I think when we talk about just floating right over, a lot of people they have that mindset right at the precipice of retirement. We're so close, it'll be fine. There's a lot more detail to planning for retirement that you really have to address at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do make it to Paradise Falls, and we have one more segment to talk about it. I feel like the movie's only 20 minutes in, and we've got to hustle now. But this is the fun part where they see some crazy creatures, and they learn that Carl's hero is not who he thought he was. A lot to talk about as we go to the movies and try to glean financial lessons from the movie Up, part of our summer movie series here on the Get Ready for the Future show. Time to take our final break, and we'll be right back.
The beauty of a potter's work is that each item is unique. No piece is the same. That's what makes it art. At Gen Wealth, we believe your financial plan should be unique to you. Through our process, your money is carefully shaped around your goals and dreams. Your future, artfully crafted. Call us today or visit our website and connect with us. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors.
There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances, more than just investments. Connect with us at Gen Wealth and harness the power of more.
Want more straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Listen to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the Get Ready for the Future show.
Talking about the movie Up and financial lessons we can glean from that on today's Get Ready for the Future show. If you've been with us for the last 3 weeks, we've been picking a movie. We did Top Gun a couple of weeks ago, The Princess Bride last week, and we're finishing up today with Up. And next week, we get back to business with questions to ask your advisor during volatility. There has certainly been a lot of that. There is more expected as we get closer to the election and the daily changing news revolving around the COVID-19 pandemic. And Ryan Dietrich will join us for a segment in that broadcast next week. So he, of course, joins us almost monthly. That is the plan always. And Ryan is a very busy guy working for LPL Research. He's a senior market strategist there and always kind to give of his time. LPL Financial, if you don't know, is our broker-dealer that we affiliate with here at Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. So back to the movie, and they have made it to Paradise Falls, and there's some more characters popping in now. We get to meet Kevin, the crazy-looking bird. We get Doug, who is a dog who has a collar on it that allows him to talk. So the fantasy continues here in Paradise Falls. They eventually find out that the master of these dogs, along with Doug, is Charles Muntz. He's a famous adventurer that Carl and Ellie loved to watch as a kid, and Carl is excited to meet him. He doesn't turn out to be who he thought he was going to be. He's kind of the main villain, as it turns out, as this thing plays out. So he gets disappointed with finding out his hero is actually a villain. And then as Kevin appears outside on Carl's floating house at one point in the movie, and Doug helps them, and Russell escaped from Charles's ship. They narrowly escape the dogs. Russell wants to help Kevin, the bird, get home. Carl doesn't want to participate in that. They begin trying to float Kevin on the house back to her babies. And there's this comment that Russell makes. He says, Mr. Fredrickson, the wilderness isn't quite what I expected. It's kind of wild. And they've been through a wild ride at this point, to say the least. I mean, it's not how they made it sound in my book. Sometimes you get into the financial world, the investment world, and things don't exactly turn out like they've been promised to you, because maybe it's because of who you've been listening to.
Yeah, I love it. Kind of along those same lines, he goes on to say, my dad made it sound so easy. He's really good at camping and how to make fire from rocks and stuff. And so you think about, what do people think that they know about money? And what they think that they know about money is probably very different from the reality of money, but they think they know it. So that is their reality until they get slapped in the face by the real world.
And there's kind of two pieces to this for me. There's the pre-retirement stage where sometimes people have unrealistic expectations for what their portfolio can do. Some people think it's just a straight up, they hear about the 12% mutual fund that's out there somewhere supposedly, and they think, well, that's 12% every year. They don't realize that even, by the way, it's not 12%, but even the averages that are out there, it's like a roller coaster.
It
doesn't just go up. It goes up and down. So years like this one can make them panic and make the wrong decision because they're scared and they thought they knew something and it turns out different than they expected. The other side of that is entering retirement. How many people get to retirement and they go, wow, this is a little different than what I expected.
Yeah.
They didn't have somebody to kind of usher them into that, let them know what to look for. A big part of what we do is educating people about what to expect. And if you know it's coming, it's a little bit easier to take it when it does. Those healthcare costs, your needs for income. If we've taken the time to really build a plan that protects that, I think it helps you with not feeling that kind of disenchanted feeling when you get there.
And I look at this as a parent right now with an upcoming senior in my house, and every time we do something, I go, does he know how to do that? Like, we just got a medical bill, and, it's not every month now that we have medical bills, and so I'm going, are we going to have any more medical bills before he leaves? Do I need to teach him this now? Because I don't think he knows how to do this. It's that constant, what does he need to know? What does he need to know? So, I mean, obviously, the kid here, Russell's impression of what the wilderness was like, it was different from reality. It's our job as parents, to the best of our ability, to prepare them for what the real world is, financially and in every other way. And one of the things that we offer to our clients is to bring your children in with you. And I'm going to say, regardless of age, bring in the future generations, regardless of age, because there's a few different reasons for that. One is for you, as you age, for you to share with responsible adult children the information that they need to know in order for them to, at some point, make wise decisions on your behalf. If your health dictates that is a need in the future, then they're already informed and they've walked through that together with you. But then also for the younger generations, for you to bring them in to help build that foundation for themselves. I just think it's critical to share that knowledge.
It is, and they're not learning it anywhere else, guys.
No.
There's not a class in the high school that's teaching them. I got to college and realized I didn't know how to fill out a check.
Yeah.
I'd never dealt with checks because I always lived off cash as a teenager.
Sure.
And so I didn't even know how to fill out a check. And the first one I had to ask the person I was paying, how do I do this? Because I wasn't sure what to put. Something as simple as that. But think about long-term the impact of an education. We've talked about this before with certain family members I have that I've kind of, basically I've griped a lot about how I wish I'd known things sooner. And Lucas just the other day said, hey, I'll be old enough to work soon, won't I? And I said, yeah, at your next birthday, you'll be 14. You can get a job. He goes, what's that thing you've been talking about KK did at 18? I said, it's an IRA. He's like, I want one of those. I was like, okay, we'll do that. We'll get you started because you can do a custodial IRA as long as they have income. Right. They can have that. If you're not talking about it, they're not learning it. So take time to talk about it with them.
What is your financial wilderness? I think that's the question that maybe we can ask our listeners and our viewers today. I think about the retirement red zone. That equates to the financial wilderness. So I had a meeting with a client not that long ago, and he was talking about, hey, I've got all these guys at work that they've got these 401ks, and they're about to walk into retirement. They have no idea how they're going to make withdrawals and make that money last. And I think about the change that we always talk about in the retirement red zone. Accumulation can be easy. Just keep throwing money at it and be properly invested in the right allocation strategy, and you can probably get there. But when you get there, there's your wilderness. Nobody, when you talk about not being taught, nobody has a clue, ladies, about what they're going to do when they get there.
Yeah, I recently sat down. It's kind of funny. It's always the cobbler's children who go shoeless. I recently sat down and went through in my own plan, like, what is I might retire sooner than this date, but what is my absolute final, retirement date? And that date has been chosen and the plan is in place. I'm in my 40s. So talking to my peers out there, it's not that far away. It's going to be here way before you realize it. And, that retirement red zone that Scott's talking about, that's the last 5 to 10 years before retirement. Well, the question is, do you know where your 10-year marker is? Do you know if you're in the red zone or not? Because you might be in it and not even have taken the time to go, oh, my final retirement date is probably about right here, so I'm in that red zone already.
And it's part of those statistics I've been learning about from this RICP program is that like half of the population out there will retire before they intended to, either for health reasons of their own, or their company offers some sort of retirement package, or their partner gets into some health trouble. You're more likely to retire earlier than you expected. So if your plan's in place for your goal date, then you're probably on track to at least retire maybe a little less comfortably, but at least you've got something to start with if you do have to enter that retirement a little bit earlier.
We've got about a minute left before final thoughts, but everything works out. They get back home, and Carl finds his purpose, because when you talk about retiring potentially too early or earlier than you expected, what are you going to do with that time? Because Carl now gets to help be a mentor I'm drawing a blank on his name.
To Russell.
I was going to say Kevin, but that's the bird. He wasn't a mentor to the bird. He was a mentor to Russell, and that becomes his purpose. And he's no longer that grumpy old man after this adventure. You have to retire to something, not from something.
Yeah, that's something we talk about a lot. It's something we put in our book, and we just believe very passionately about. I talked earlier in the show about wanting my daughter to have a purpose and a passion to pursue at work in her career. And we want that for you in your career. We want it for you in your retirement. You're not just here to breathe in and out. There is a purpose as long as you're breathing.
And I think there's a moment in the movie where we get that too from Ellie, because he finally opens the adventure book that she had left for him. And he feels like he's failed her throughout their lifetime by not taking her to Paradise Falls. And then he finds out that she saw every moment with him as part of the adventure. Yeah. And that she had actually really enjoyed her life. And I think sometimes we get caught up in that long term and forget to enjoy life now. For my final thought, though, I want to throw out Doug a little bit here. Throughout the movie, he'll be talking and then he goes, squirrel. If you don't have a plan, it's easy to get squirreled. So make sure you've got a plan that you can stick to when life happens.
Yeah. I would say for my final thought that life is full of adventures going, up to the point of retirement and through retirement. Don't miss your adventures by not having a plan in place.
Yeah, and I think back to the most iconic scene in the movie, the balloons lifting them up, where the name of the movie even comes from. Think about how radical and last-ditch that was for Carl, and where is that potential to happen in your life? Are you banking on a lottery win to be your retirement plan? Are you banking on, as we talked about in the show, the 4% rule, making it through retirement without running out of money before you run out of time? Don't be radical and unrealistic or fantasy-like with your retirement plan. Get it done the right way with professionals. You can do it through us with the Gen Wealth Ready to Retire process. That begins with a phone call, 501-653-7355. That will get you in touch with an advisor near you. We have offices in West Little Rock, Hot Springs, Bryant, Conway, where Teresa is, also El Dorado, and in Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana. You can also reach us info@getreadyforthefuture.com. Well, this has been fun. I've enjoyed the summer movie series, and summer's not over, but we are now concluding our movie series. And next week, we're going to be talking about questions to ask your advisor during volatility. We know that's always going to be there, but certainly seems like we've had more of it this year than in years past. Missed John today, but enjoyed being with you. Missed you all a little bit, though, having to be separated. But we are going to continue to do this for as long as it takes to get through this pandemic.
Yes, absolutely.
That's going to do it for all of us on the Get Ready for the Future show today. Again, thanks for listening. We'll be back with you live streaming on Facebook and YouTube at 11:30 next Wednesday morning.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 501-653-7355. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas-registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.